A shocking turn in the Russia-Ukraine war. Looks like war has officially started. The US and NATO partners have issued a strong warning to Russia, stating that Russia's actions against Ukraine will have catastrophic repercussions. As NATO foreign ministers assembled in Latvia to examine escalating military action along the Ukraine border, NATO General Secretary Jens Stoltenberg and US President Joe Biden slammed Russia. Welcome to War Zone. If you don't want to miss out on any new political news, conflicts, battles, or anything else related to politics, then subscribe to our channel and hit the bell button so that you will always be notified. Biden stated there will be a huge price Russia has to pay if they employ force against the independence of Ukraine once more. Both NATO and the United States have proved their capacity to impose penalties or economic political activities, as well as increase their military presence in the area over time to ensure that all allies are fully secured and protected from any Russian aggression. Russian President Vladimir Putin, on the other hand, warned the West not to exceed the Kremlin's red lines. The West is concerned about surveys indicating that Russia's military presence near the border is growing. This fresh buildup comes after a similar circumstance earlier this year when Russia amassed over 100,000 troops along the border before announcing a drawback. NATO is concerned because Putin's objectives are yet unknown. The purpose of the discussion in Latvia was to talk about the contingency preparations. President Biden of the United States has reason to be enraged. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine and continues to support separatists seeking independence. Russia has denied organizing an assault so far, blaming the West, led by Biden, for inflaming tensions. Ukraine has urged for immediate measures to discourage Moscow, claiming that a Russian military operation could be started in the blink of an eye. Russia's strike on a target 20 kilometers from the NATO border rose to the top of the agenda as the most important action. Russia launched an airstrike on a military site in western Ukraine, where American troops were training Ukrainian armed forces personnel. Russia started the conflict 11 kilometers away from the Polish border, where NATO soldiers were stationed on high alert. Some Western officials are concerned that this onslaught on the Polish border would not only expand the Russian control of Ukraine geographically, but will also develop into a bigger European confrontation in a war that many fear. At this crucial point, we must analyze the causes for the assault, President Biden remarked. Why has the Russian army, which has been invading Ukraine from the north, south, and east for 17 days, suddenly shifted its focus on Kyiv? The most basic response to this issue may be the 28 MiG-29 fighter airplanes that Poland just requested from the US because the Ukrainian armed forces want warplanes urgently in the current conflict in Ukraine. These must be airplanes that Ukrainian army pilots are familiar with. This is the MiG aircraft that Eastern European nations have in their inventory. Biden, on the other hand, declined to transfer the MiG-29 to Ukraine immediately. This role would allow the United States to provide direct fighter aircraft assistance to Ukraine. A considerable amount of weaponry equipment aid has just arrived in Ukraine from North Atlantic Alliance members. The airplanes are thought to be powerful enough to turn the course of the battle and sharp enough to elicit a direct response from Russia. This offer was likewise turned down by US President Joe Biden. The Kremlin, on the other hand, issued an explicit threat to the West in response to the revelation. It has been proclaimed that Russia's legitimate military objective would be transfer of armaments to Ukraine. In reaction to Moscow's aggressiveness, Biden recently stated that backers of Ukraine, including the United Kingdom, Germany, and the US, had swiftly supplied hundreds of anti-tank and anti-aircraft missiles to Kyiv. According to the US president's words, Russian convoys transporting weapons are a justifiable target. Following this declaration, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg issued a harsh warning to Russia, stating that any assault on any NATO nation or territory would trigger Article 5 of the alliance. Behind the scenes, this declaration was interpreted as NATO's first threat of assault on Russia. Biden and NATO officials underlined that they do not intend to face Russian soldiers in Ukraine directly. According to Ukrainian officials, at least 35 persons, including military personnel and civilians, were killed, and 134 others were injured in the incident near Ukraine's border with Poland. The assaults killed 180 foreign combatants, according to Russia's defense ministry. According to Biden, neither statistic could be independently validated by top Pentagon officials. Cruise missiles launched by Russian airplanes targeted locations in western Ukraine. When the missiles were fired, it was unknown where the Russian planes were. The jets were traveling from Saratov in southeastern Russia, according to Ukrainian officials. Simultaneously, Russia continues to bomb innocent citizens in various locations of Ukraine. A Russian attack on a residential neighborhood in the southern Ukrainian coastal city of Mykolaiv killed 9 people. At least 35 people were killed and 134 were injured in a Russian bombing on a military facility in Yavoriv, roughly 30 miles west of Lviv and less than 10 miles from the Polish border. The bombing occurred only hours after the Kremlin issued a warning that Western supply lines into the besieged country were legitimate targets. Brent Renaud, an award-winning American filmmaker whose work has featured in the New York Times and other publications, was murdered by Russian soldiers outside Kyiv in the town of Irpin. Juan Arredondo, a photojournalist from the United States, was injured and is still in the hospital. According to local authorities, the Ukrainian port city of Mariupol is running out of food and water reserves. The president, Vladimir Zelensky, stated earlier on Sunday that a supply convoy was only 2 hours away from the city, where 400,000 people are trapped. According to Kyiv's municipal government, the city has a 2-week stockpile of food in case of a blockade. Peace talks representatives from Ukraine and Russia have sounded upbeat ahead of additional meetings in the coming days. Mikhailo Podolyak, a Ukrainian negotiator, claimed the negotiations had improved. According to Reuters, Russian delegate Leonid Slutsky stated that great progress had been made and that they intended to reach a common stance shortly. Meanwhile, Bartholomew I, the spiritual head of the Orthodox Church, has called for a ceasefire in Ukraine, hailing the country's strong resistance to Russian soldiers. As Biden acknowledged recently, more than 14,000 people have been jailed for anti-war rallies in 112 towns since the invasion of Ukraine began. Russia deployed prohibited phosphorus bombs in an attack overnight in Pospazna, eastern Ukraine, according to Ukraine's human rights ombudsman, which would be a war crime. India's government has declared that its embassy in Ukraine would be temporarily relocated to Poland. According to Ukraine's foreign minister, the mayor of a city in southern Ukraine is the latest to be abducted by Russian soldiers. Russian soldiers have abducted Dnipro resident Yevhen Mateyev, according to Dmytro Kuleba. 9 persons were murdered in airstrikes in Mykolaiv, a city in southern Ukraine. The city is thought to be crucial in any future attack on the Black Sea port of Odessa. Biden says he worries Vladimir Putin will use chemical weapons and that if he does, it will be a game changer in the fight. The UK has already awarded more than 3,000 visas to Ukrainian refugees, with the government expecting the ultimate total to be in the tens of thousands. Rishi Sunak, the UK Chancellor, has stated that fresh investments in Russia are unnecessary. He asked corporations to consider very carefully about their interests in a message released accompanied by a video on Sunday morning. Russian military opens fire on a train transporting Ukrainian citizens, including more than 100 children fleeing the conflict in eastern Ukraine. The conductor of the train was murdered, and the Ukrainian National Railway attempted to evacuate the remaining personnel and passengers with a replacement train. At least 2,187 people have died in Mariupol, the beleaguered seaside city. Ukrainian officials have stated the amount could not be independently confirmed since the beginning of the war. Despite the attack on the military camp on Sunday, Western authorities, including Biden, have rebuffed their request. This indicates that Biden is attempting to avert a potential clash with Russia. Mr. Kirby, a Pentagon spokesman, said the U.S. military is worried about NATO's eastern flank on the Poland-Ukraine border and is exploring measures to bolster airspace defense. However, he stated that the U.S. was opposed to the concept of a no-fly zone. NATO aims to recruit 30,000 troops from 25 nations in Norway in the next weeks for twice-yearly military exercises that will include live-fire simulations. The drills were announced more than 8 months ago, but they became more important as the battle in Ukraine drew closer to Poland's border, putting the alliance on high alert. In addition, following the release of the U.S. intelligence report, President Biden promised that Russia would pay the price if it utilized chemical weapons in Ukraine. Now the ball is in Russia's court totally. Their activity will decide the future of Ukraine as well as the world. Alright everyone, this brings us to the end of our video. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Until then, take care, and we will be back with another video.